Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are just getting everyone situated. We just opened the door and I'm seeing some participants come in now. So we're going to give everyone a chance to get settled in. All right. Looks like we have a lot of people in here. So, hey everyone, I'm Serena Gruya. I'm the county's community engagement coordinator. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn on this very exciting topic, the Albemarle County Economic Development Strategic Plan. We have some wonderful guests, and I'm going to kick it over to Emily Kilroy, our Director of Economic Development, to start us off.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I am sorry I am off camera. I am having a technical difficulty that I'm working to get resolved in the background, but really want to thank everyone for taking your lunchtime to hang with us. I've heard from some folks that a lunch and learn virtually is not fair. So we'll try to throw some emoji hot dogs into the chat for you for your digital lunch. We are really excited to be at this point in the economic development strategic plan process. We kicked off really publicly at the beginning of the calendar year, but have been working behind the scenes since almost this time last year to bring a consultant on board to help work this process through with us. We're really delighted to introduce residents to the full community. And they've done a lot of data analysis, and we've done together a lot of stakeholder engagement and public engagement to understand how we can sort of pair the data insights with the experiences and aspirations that the community has. So today they'll be walking through the draft strategy. This draft strategy has been presented in the past couple of weeks to our stakeholder committee, which is about 20 folks who are business owners, educators, workforce developers, regional partners who work in this space. They've also presented it to the Economic Development Authority and the Board of Supervisors. And so this is just another touch point for us to understand if we're on the right track so that we can get started on an implementation plan that we hope the board will be in a position to adopt this August. So I'm going to let Stephen and Brandon take over the details, but just want to thank everyone for spending your afternoon with us. And with that, I'll introduce Stephen Pedigo.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're having a great into the week. Happy Friday. Excited to share with you guys our work. So what we'll do for the next sort of 25 to 30 minutes is just to walk through the preliminary strategic framework that we've developed for the strategy. As Emily has mentioned, we've done a lot of work to present this to stakeholders throughout the community. We're excited to get your feedback and your comments on this as well. I will say we are not going to present the entire deck today. There's a full deck that includes all of the research work that we've done and the research components as well. You can, I think, find that on the county's website. I'm sure Serena or Emily will put a link in the chat for folks to have that if you'd like to find the full deck. In that deck, you'll find a few things that, in addition to what we're talking about today, you'll find the research work that really was the foundation for this strategy. And you'll also find some case studies and examples of when we talk about this work, how to actually bring this work to life in terms of best practices. So it's filled with case studies and best practices. And then in addition, there are metrics, so KPI metrics that we'll use to evaluate success as we go along the implementation of this work. So with that, we'll walk through and start to walk through the strategy framework. I think before we do that, I think there are some things that I'd like to start with, and that is that one of the great things about the county and the advantages of working with Albemarle is that there's a lot of opportunity that we are starting with in terms of place of strength. So they're not every place that we work with in the country that actually gets to start with a wealth of strengths and resources. But you all, as a county and as a community, are just really have an embarrassment of riches in terms of things that we can think about in terms of assets to build upon. When I think about where we started this engagement, one of the things that really jumped out to us was just this commitment amongst our county staff, community partners, our stakeholder committee, even the Board of Supervisors, to really think about how the county can lead with innovation, particularly innovation being not only just the types of things that we do in our industry sectors, but the way we innovate around placemaking and housing and workforce development, all being kind of a central through line by the work that we do. Really strong anchor-based institutions. You think about the University of Virginia, PVC, and others, and what they bring to the table is really being able to anchor our economy. Really strong strategic location and where we're located and the access to where we are. Big investments around things like Rivanna Futures and the real potential impact that will have on the county, and the opportunity to leverage that to really think about the next kind of generation of industry in the county. And then all the things that really make a community really awesome to live in, and that is just this really beautiful landscape and culture and community opportunity that you have in terms of the values that the place has. And all of that really attracts a really smart, educated group of residents to the county and every day, and it's becoming a really attractive feature. When we talk about this plan, I think one of the things we wanted to make sure is that you understand, and that we as a community understand, that we just should start from building out a strategic plan without doing deep dives on the assets of the community. And so I just wanted to highlight some of the things that we've done thus far. Is that, one, this has been a pretty detailed research process. We've done some competitive benchmarking analysis. We've looked at really deep into the industry sector here to understand competitive advantages. Again, even in addition to the framework document that has the research summary, there are analytics that you could have access to look at those reports. And I think Emily and team will make those available. Lots of stakeholder engagement. We've done some survey work. We've met with many conversations around our elected officials and our EDA Board of Supervisors, and then have had an opportunity to engage with a really smart stakeholder committee that's provided insights on this. And not to mention, we've had really great input from the county staff as well. So we feel really good about where we are in terms of the foundation of the research that really drives this plan, but also the opportunity that we've been able to hear a lot of diverse opinions in this as when it went along. And one of the reasons we're doing this again today is to get more feedback. At the county at the glance, just a couple things to note. As I mentioned before, this is a county that's got a lot of assets, 117,000 residents. We've seen pretty good population growth over the last 5 years. Job growth has been pretty strong here as well, about 3 times faster than Virginia overall. Really strong median household income, up about 12% over the last few years. Knowing, though, even as we think about income, we do face some housing affordability challenges, even because housing is pretty expensive in the region. So want to acknowledge some of the challenges that we face both in both housing as well as in childcare. I've mentioned before those institutions, the fact that you've got your home to, a tier 1 research institution, and the University of Virginia, the investments around the federal institutions, but also your just really strong community college, just makes this a real opportunity to build a plan that's going to really drive the opportunity for the county forward. And then there's a lot of human assets to work around as well. I'm a big believer that economic development should happen with a community, not to a community. And so leveraging people and leveraging the talent assets and the human infrastructure is really important. You can see that in that we've got 6 in 10 residents with a college degree. We've got good, strong growth in our STEM sectors. But we do press some challenges, and that is even as we're educating a lot of really smart people in our institutions, particularly when we look at that 25 to 44 years of age group, we see a little bit of that talent bleeding outside of the county. So you'll see in the plan as we go along, we want to really be intentional about how we think about addressing the needs of young families, working professionals, and residents that really will help us move the economy forward. So as I mentioned before, we're now going to talk a little bit about the strategy. And to do that, I think first and foremost, you have to kind of understand about where we're starting. One of the things I'll say about this plan is that this is a plan that's is a countywide plan. It's not just a plan for the Office of Economic Development. It's a plan that the county as a whole will be working on cross-sector, both with its private sector partners, its development partner, its institution partners. But it is a plan that the county will work with civic organizations, its regional institutions, and its other partners as well as state. So as we walk through this plan, one of the things you won't see today is the detailed action plan, but note that we are thinking about how Emily and team and county officials will be working alongside their partners to achieve what we're hoping to get out of this work together. Um, Starting with a real basic mission statement about, this plan is really, I think, founded and situated in the idea that about the mission of the Economic Development Department, which is first and foremost to think more strategically and more intentionally about how we are um, really, in a sense, thinking about to diversify the economy and help provide opportunity to support and scale up businesses, just with the idea that we know one of the things that we have to achieve in this plan is to try to take some burden off the residential tax burden. We heard that over and over as we went throughout the plan, and much of what the efforts of what the Economic Development Department is doing is to do that. But it's also about making sure that we create opportunity for residents, career-led job opportunities, a place where folks can kind of see themselves in the economic development portfolio and really achieving some long-lasting prosperity for all residents. And we hope to do that really through this lens of pushing forward an innovative approach. So all that is to say, as I mentioned before, everything we put together has led that the county, in terms of insights and research, shows that the county's growing, the economy is evolving, and the vision statement and the 5 goals and the strategies that you'll see really kind of are a birth out of that research, but also just shaped with the engagement that we heard throughout the process. And one of the things I think that's interesting about engagement when you do this in a community is that you get diverse differences of opinions. And engagement is not always the things that we heard throughout this are not always fact. A lot of times it's how the community and stakeholders vision and see the county. We try to be representative of diverse perspectives going forward and thinking about how we can, be resilient, be innovative, but also I know one of the things that's really central to the county's values is that you're just this really wonderful place to live, and wanting to be protective of our community in terms of its green spaces and its quality of place and quality of life, and really leveraging and leaning into that as well. So today we're going to talk through vision statement, goals, and strategies. Again, vision statements are our preferred future, goals are our outcomes. I like to think about this as our elevator pitch. If someone was to pull us as a group and say, well, what is the county doing around economic development? You can say, these are the things we're doing, this, and this. And then the strategies are how we activate on those. Those are how the levers that we pull. And then the one thing that we'll, as I said before, work with Emily and team on is really about the steps and partners and resources to really activate on this work going forward. So our vision statement, we are Albemarle County, we are rooted in innovation, we're open for investment, we are a destination where entrepreneurs, makers, growers, and thinkers, where bold ideas take root, businesses scale, partnerships thrive, and we really, really want to make sure that we're really leading the way in Virginia's next innovation-based economy. So really kind of thinking this through that, yes, we want to be a destination for all of those people that really kind of make the magic happen as it relates to innovation. And it's a place where lots of innovation is already happening. It's just now our opportunity as an economic development a plan and office and team to really kind of build upon that. To achieve that goal, we've outlined kind of 5 goals that the strategy is really aligned on. First is leading in intelligence and national security. So our first goal is that we will lead Virginia's intelligence and national security innovation economy, a sector that's really of importance both for the Commonwealth, but also for the federal government. And y'all have got some really amazing assets to really kind of leverage and become a place of opportunity around this. Not to mention, these are very high paying jobs. It creates career pathways as well. So a goal really centered on leveraging and situating our expertise and leadership in that space. Goal 2 is building off a lot of the successes that are already happening through terrific organizations like Seville Bio and, frankly, the University of Virginia, and even in the city of Charlottesville itself, which is leading to discover in life sciences. So we'll grow into the Mid-Atlantic's premier destination for biotechnology and life sciences. As we get to that goal, we'll talk a lot about what's already happening there and the real opportunity around scaling. What I love about where y'all live in your county is that you've got these really kind of leading edge innovation-based sectors like life sciences and national security. But we've also got this really amazing agricultural economy that's here. So leading into our legacy to really kind of think about how we modernize that. So transforming Albemarle's legacy into a modern day agribusiness economy. We met a lot with small business owners and entrepreneurs in this space. And there's some things that we need to do to kind of help ensure our legacy farms and our wineries and all of our hospitality businesses in this space can continue to be successful and grow and prosper as well. Goal 4 is about ensuring that we've got the talent pipelines to do that, so empowering talent. So we want to make the county the place where talent and entrepreneurs stay, scale, and succeed. So looking at the barriers that sometimes come with things like housing affordability and childcare, but also just trying to make sure that we're curating the county as a great place to live in terms of destination. And then finally, if you do 1, 2, and 3, and 4 right, the other goal 5 is really around the basics. It's ensuring that we're kind of doing our block and tackling, so to speak, as it relates to economic development, cleaning up our permitting processing, making sure that we've got the sites, we're working with our utility partners, and all those types of things that become important as well. So what we'll do next is we're going to walk through each of these goals and talk a little bit about how we activate them on through the strategy. So goal 1, my apologies, we're not going to goal 1 yet. We're gonna talk how do we know success. So as I mentioned before, when you look at the deck online and you're able to kind of spend some time with it, you'll notice that we've outlined some KPI metrics for each of each of the goals and strategy actions. But broadly speaking, one of the things that we wanted to ask ourselves, both as kind of advisors working on this, but with Emily's team and the board of supervisors, was really how do we know if we're having success? What will show if we are really doing the things that we want to achieve in terms of talent growth and expansion? And so, generally speaking, we want to think about asking the question about, are we seeing the right type of business expansion in the economy? Jobs, company, and investment. A lot of folks in the community, as I've done this work all over the country, frankly, all over the world, there's a lot of folks that think you can turn growth on and off like a spigot, right? The no growth community a lot of times will say, well, we don't want growth. Well, growth isn't something you can just turn off turn off like it's a water spigot. But what you can do with growth, and the reason that you do this strategic development work, is to really have a real clear point of view about the type of growth you want to welcome into your community. And for a community like Albemarle, we're looking for growth that aligns with career-paying jobs, high wages, that don't take up huge footprints, particularly because we are wanting to maintain our protected kind of rural farmland area in the community. So we want to make sure that we have a real point of view about ensuring that we're doing the right type of a business expansion as we diversify, but it is the type of growth. So it is, not all growth is created equal. Having a real point of view about growth is important. Secondly, we know we've got some institutional advantages as some advantages that relates to workforce. 6 in 10 residents have a college degree. We're pretty smart, but there's some things that are interesting when you dive deeper into labor statistics here. Our labor participation rate is frankly lower than the U.S. average and the Commonwealth's average. We know that we've got to do a better job of holding on to that prime working age, 25 to 44 years of age. We heard that a lot through stakeholder engagement with the institutions that we met with. So thinking about that kind of next generation of talent is going to be really important. We become a place that retirees like to spend because, frankly, college towns are very much becoming a destination for retirees because of the high quality in place. We want to welcome that growth as well, and that talent is critically important, but also kind of focusing in on that working population that's really going to drive our industry sectors is going to be key. And then finally, the thing that we heard a lot about is we've got to do something around economic development. And the reason that counties and cities and like what we're doing to do is to invest in this work is to really just ensure that we're able to diversify the commercial tax base. So, as we look now, about 88 to 89% of the tax base in the county is driven by residential property taxes. And so if we're doing economic development, we can start to whittle that down and have a bit more diversification. Also, frankly, just making us a much more resilient and over time, maybe even a bit more affordable place to live as we go forward. So those are kind of things about how we're thinking about metrics. And as I said before, dive into the plan, geek out. There's a lot of metrics there that you can look at. So goal 1, leading on innovation-based economy. Why this matters. First and foremost, this is a sector that we see real strong growth in the Commonwealth, but it's also a sector of, if you've been following the discussion around federal investment and federal innovation spending, lots of questions about cuts and what will not be cut. But this is a sector that's actually continuing to see investment. And we've got some real strong advantages to work for us in this sector, particularly the investment around Ravana Futures, The fact that we've got many of the programs at the University of Virginia, as well as this kind of emerging ecosystem of in technology intelligence firms already happening here. So this is a sector that's just a natural opportunity for us to leverage and really utilize as a way to, as I said before, achieve some of those developments in terms of the growth that we're looking for. How do we achieve this really quickly? First and foremost, activating on Ravana Futures so that, again, the county's made this investment. The real next step in that is activation, right? Activation, which requires us to think about how we plan, not just the physicality of that space, but how do we use it in terms of what it will look like, the business development strategies, the activation strategies, all those things that come with that. 1.2 is working with our partners, particularly in the Central Innovation Corridor, to really kind of push forward this kind of regional approach. There's a lot of counties around us. This is corridor that is doing really great work here. The partners are already in place, kind of looking at even just asking questions about what kind of technology are we coming out of the University of Virginia and our research partners, and how do we catalyze that again to think about creating more private sector investment. I think one of the things that we heard, building on that point, is that the county's got, as I mentioned before, lots of these big, great institutions, but we could argue that we're potentially overly reliant on those institutions, right? The needing to catalyze a bit more of a private sector based driven economy in this place is an opportunity. And that's really what 1.2 and frankly, this larger goal is kind of really centered on. 1.3 and 1.4 are about workforce, getting our folks together in terms of our partners, our workforce partners, our economic development partners, to really dive deep into what we're forming as this kind of sector partnership approach. And I say that because a lot of sectors, each sector that we're kind of outlining, all have particular needs. And economic development strategies are not one size fits all. They have to be curated very significantly to the needs of those enterprises and those institutions. And so doing 1.3 and 1.4 gives us a workforce perspective to do that, as well as addressing some of the policy needs. And then finally, economic development, you'll hear me say this a couple times throughout this presentation, is really about storytelling. So you got to market, you got to tell your story. And one of the things that this will require us to do as we're doing these efforts around the innovation-based economy is just to be sure that we are actively talking about what makes us an innovative place and what really kind of sets us apart in this area. So this idea of telling that story is really key. Goal 2 is, I think, an exciting goal because a lot of the ingredients of this goal are really, frankly, have been laid by some of the county's really strong partners in Seville Bio and others. But when you look at the life sciences sector and the biotechnology sector in the county, one of the things I think you will look at if you look at the data is that really strong strength, by the way, about 76 times stronger than the U.S. average in terms of concentration of those firms. We are a place that I think ranks among the top 10 for early stage capital in medical devices, and those are all great things to celebrate. The challenge we face as a county is that as we incubate these ideas and we incubate these enterprises, a lot of times these places are leaving. And why are they leaving? Because they don't have the resources to scale, the space, the people, the partnerships, the support from government to do that. And that's really what this goal is doing. It's not about asking to do a lot of, let's bring a lot of new types of firms. Maybe, yes, we'll do some traction efforts around supply chain, but really leaning into what the sector is and who the sector is already. So to do that, one is about expanding our infrastructure. We may want to think through, what are the spaces that are needed? Space, wet lab, small scale kind of manufacturing space. One of the things I will say about life sciences is an interesting point. A lot of people don't realize this, is that of all of kind of the knowledge-based sectors and the knowledge-based and innovation-based economy, this is a sector that actually provides real career pathways, particularly when firms scale, meaning that you don't necessarily have to have a college degree to participate, to do some of the work around pharmaceutical or lab work. You just need some training and on-job training programs. So, and it's really good wages. So there's this opportunity to meet some of our workforce goals to help us achieve some of the opportunity and belonging that we want to have as a county as well. 2.2 is around, again, thinking about our regional approach with our partners. 2.3 is leveraging and working with Seville Bio and others to really think about how we are building our sector partnership. 2.4 is that there is possibly an opportunity to think about how we meet some of the supply needs of some of these institutions. Again, these enterprises that we have in this sector, they need kind of growth capital, not early stage, but growth capital. We do really well in early stage capital in the county, but we need growth capital, we need talent, and then we kind of need to build that ecosystem around us. And so a real opportunity to leverage and do this work. And what's great about this work is that, life sciences can be, again, small footprints. It can be climate focused, sustainability focused. So again, as we're trying to manage and balance growth in the county and investment in the county, these are the types of enterprises that can be really helpful in doing that. Goal 4 is a goal that I'm pretty excited about, which is this agricultural goal, thinking about how we can kind of lean into who we are as a county. You don't have to spend a lot of time outside. You just spend some time driving around the county to understand there are beautiful farmlands and investments that are happening here. And frankly, a lot of really cool innovation in the space, from everything from, value-added organization to kind of cool ways of matching technology to help us kind of lead in that space. But I will say one of the things that jumped out a lot as we've had discussions with sort of like our agricultural businesses across the county was that a lot of these businesses feel constrained. There are support structures that need to be around them. And so one of the things that we're doing with this goal is really saying, let's lean into the legacy and the history that we are as a county, the values that we are as a county, and let's really use that to think about how we can, protect that, but also think about expansion, but also just offer more opportunity for some of our legacy agriculture businesses. Again, in the stakeholder engagement work, we heard a lot about how many of our farm businesses, our wineries, our hospitality, businesses are doing that. Some of those folks are having to work 2 and 3 jobs to make sure that they can actually continue to support this. So again, if we can scale, we can kind of create succession and create opportunity to kind of protect something that's really important to the ethos of who we are as a county going forward. So to do that, what do we have to do? Well, let's explore and think about, what are land use and zoning policies that are needed to support 21st century agriculture business, and really maybe supporting some diversification of different diverse revenue streams. So, for farms, could we be thinking about possible wine and food, beverage, hospitality pieces to connect that with it? Some of the technology that's needed. We heard a lot about turkey farming when we did this work in the world that you got to have the right type of infrastructure to kind of support that because of the technology to do that, broadband becoming important. So needing to understand land use and infrastructure that's important to do that. These businesses require some opportunity around cold storage and broadband and just kind of a little bit more small scale rural manufacturing, commercial kitchens. We know the county's made some investments there. There could be an opportunity to need more of that to continue to build upon that. These businesses a lot of times can be hard to reach, meaning that they're not the first to market to go access, small business training or succession planning. And so being very intentional about how we are connecting those businesses through a resource hub, through all of those opportunities and strategies that are needed to support small businesses is key. 3.4 is thinking a bit outside the box, and that is that a lot of times when cities and counties and communities think about agriculture, they think about local buying. Y'all all really do really well at that. The county is already a place where you can go to a great restaurant or local farmers market or grab stuff out of the grocery store that was produced locally. There's a need to think more to help these businesses scale a little bit and create a bit more of a market around thinking about how we can think about opportunity outside the county, so wholesaling and scalable market pathways. We want to do just like we're doing with our our innovation-based businesses in national security and in life sciences. And we want to bring our farm-based business, our agriculture businesses together to talk about what are the challenges that they're facing. Again, one of the things I want you to see in this plan is the real intentionality that we have the county playing as a convener. The key role the county can play is to convene, bring people together to really unpack the specific challenges that those sectors face to really create tailored solutions. Again, economic development is not a one-size-fits-all model for any community, and it's the same thing that applies for sectors overall. And then finally, really continuing to lean into agritourism. We heard a lot about the tourism-based economy and hospitality being really beautiful and important to who we are, and we want to continue to do that and leverage that work as we go on as well. 2 more goals, and then I promise to wrap up in about 6-7 minutes here. Goal 4 is really about talent, empowering us as a place where people can stay, succeed, and scale. We want people to be there. We want them to be sticky. One of the things that I think is important for us to remember about economic development is that economic development is not all about business and enterprise. It has to be about people as well. And that means that we also have to think about social capitalism, meaning that how do we help people create community with each other and connect to place, that being super, super important. Because when a person becomes sticky, they're less likely to pick up and leave. What's one thing that has been proven over and over and over in the economic development literature and practice. So how do we do that? Well, let's think through with our UVA and PVC partners about how do we really connect people, our student base to community and make them think about the county and the place where they're living as a connection. There's a lot of cities across the country, places across the country that are doing this. The most successful example is a place called, was the Campus Philadelphia initiative. Tulsa has do this. Salt Lake City is doing this. Even there's efforts around Detroit to do this, around trying to create those connections, around getting students to connect back if they can see themselves living here and having opportunity here through, internships and volunteerism. They're more likely to stay and stick around. And we know that to be a group of talent pool that we need to fuel our industries going forward. 4.2 is about doing the same thing, but doing it for young professionals, civic engagement. Throughout this, we heard a lot about what young professionals want in a community, but we didn't hear a lot enough from the young professionals. So we want to engage young professionals to hear from them and help them really think about how they connect in the community. 4.3 is to continue to do all the cool things that Emily and team is doing around destination development, the restaurants, the retail, the entertainment options, all those things that are helping us kind of reinvent some of our aging retail centers, but also just some of our nodes throughout the county as well. 4.4 is going back, being very intentional about aligning workforce development and economic development together for career pathways, really kind of focused on the career pathways. We're not focused on a job, we are focused on career pathways, which is what 4.4 allows us to do. 4.5 is really centered on the entrepreneurs, lots of resources in the county. There's no need to duplicate these, but there is a need to kind of map and coordinate them. And that is to say, if you kind of look at all the things that are available, it's like a bit of like a teenager's closet. It's a bit messy. And so trying to kind of create some order to by which we can kind of sort through this process. If you're an entrepreneur looking to launch a business or get resources, if we can really create a real clear guides and resources and hubs to do that, it can be a really kind of low-hanging fruit opportunity for making sure entrepreneurs are supported. And then finally, the thing that we hear over and over places all over the country, and y'all aren't any different, is this: we know that we have to continue to support housing and childcare initiatives. Housing and childcare are, a lot of folks can kind of view them through a growth lens, meaning that it has implications on the way we kind of think about our physical space. But I would argue with y'all is that housing and childcare is a workforce development issue. So without having suitable housing and childcare initiatives to support, those are the wraparound soft infrastructure services that are really important to ensuring that talent can stick around and stay in the county and have an implication for that as well. So goal 5 is about getting us ready to compete for investment. So we got to, clean up some of our business practices, our development processes, those types of things to really kind of make us ready to do that. And why is that? Because, one of the things we heard from our development community over and over is that barriers to entry into the county can be challenging. It can take a long time. It can be shorter, much easier to do in other places. And we don't want to lose the opportunity that we may have because we're putting up really high barriers to entry into the county. Yes, we want to make sure that we're being protective of our green space and our agriculture space and being all of those things that are really focused. That's not to say that's not what we're advocating for. What we're really just trying to say is, how do we just do it? How do we do all of that, but just do it in a way that's much more efficient and much more customer focused and easy for us all to find their ways through that process. So to do that, let's modernize our permitting process. So we're advocating that we should go back and think about how we look at the time that it takes to get us through that process. Let's develop and bring our developers together on partnerships to understand what are their pain points and how do we address those pain points. So continued engagement and feedback loop is really what 5.2 is about. Emily's already in team are spending a lot of time one-on-one with businesses to understand their needs through what we call a BRE program. We want to do that. So here's what we do. We triangulate. We do the sector-based work. We do the individual work, and then we look at kind of what the region's doing, the county's doing in terms of policy, and then we try to figure out are we being able to solve the issues that are really at hand? And if not, how do we do that together, both in a public and private partnership type of way? 5.4 is we've got an active EDA. That's our Economic Development Advisory Group, and making sure that we work with the EDA to think about like what are the right types of investments they can be making, and how do we make those investments to accelerate some of the things that we want to see in this area. 5.5 is just understanding as we do this, we got to take note of understanding all the sites and available opportunities that we have right now. So just being sure that we're having an inventory of sites that are potentially available. 5.6 is working with our partners around infrastructure, and particularly both at the airport, but also, that expanded water, sewer, energy, and broadband continues to be issues as we keep going throughout that. And then finally, if we do it all right, if we're doing goals 1 through 4 and we do goal 5 and we're putting ourselves in a way to be ready for investment, we just want to make sure we're telling the story. And there's some really great examples across the Commonwealth, both in Richmond and Arlington and other places where they're really kind of building out these really nice communication platforms to tell that economic development story. And we want to make sure that we're doing that as well, where people can see us both from the inside and outside as well as just ensuring that you all as community members and stakeholders are engaged in this work as well. So with that, again, just a big summary, leading in the innovation around intelligence and national security, to making sure that we're kind of positioning us as a great place for destination for biotechnology. 4 is really kind of supporting our agriculture community to think about the needs that they need to be able to be here now, but not be legacy, but be forward thinking, ensuring that they can grow with us in the future as the county grows. Goal 4 is ensuring that people can stick around and have the opportunity to stick around and can, create the right type of career pathways, but find each other and build connection, as well as address our housing and childcare issues that we as a community face. And then 5 is making sure that we do all the necessary block and tackling as it relates to economic development to ensure that we're ready to compete for investment. So with that, I'm going to stop, and I'm looking forward to answering. I know Emily and I are looking forward to your questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen. So far, we only have one question, which I'll get to, but feel free to use the Q&A module to add your question or raise your hand, and we can ask you to unmute so you can share your question into the space. So our first question is referring to the opening image of the rural scene of forest and pastureland. How will this economic plan protect the rural character and natural resources? So maybe you can touch on how the strategic plan intersects or engages with the other planning efforts that the county has, planning and policies. The final question is, how can we have a thriving economy without negatively impacting the natural environment? What part of this plan specifically addresses this concern?
Sure.
Yeah.
Emily,
Stephen,
you want to go first and then I will go? How's that?
Thank you. Thank you for the
Emily?
question. It's a good one. So I want to zoom out from the economic development strategic plan and sort of put the plan in context of all the other plans that the county has. So the county's comprehensive plan is really we'd like to think of it as sort of nested documents. And so the county's comprehensive plan is sort of that's the vision document. It's the largest aperture. It covers public safety, land use, transportation, parks and recreation, natural areas, cultural resources, etc. And it's a 20-year plan. So it's really like for a generation, what do we see happening for the next generation? And what can we do to prepare for that? Strategic plans are plans that governments use to really help set sort of the 5-year roadmap of how are we gonna work through the first chunk of that generational vision work that the comp plan sets out. And then, our annual budget, I like to always throw a pitch for the annual budget process, because that's really where the county says, here's where we're programming resources in the next 12 months to get this work done. If we're doing a good job, these things are all going to kind of line up and align, and you're going to be able to sort of see the through line from the comp plan down to the annual budget process. So this is the economic development strategic plan. And it really covers just economic developments, which is a chapter of the comp plan, and is some of the work that we do, and it cuts across the organization. So it's not just about the work of the Economic Development Office or the Economic Development Authority and the work that they do. But it's really, you know, across the organization, what are the levers? What are the things that the county can do to be supportive of a vibrant economy? And this plan is really looking at what's the next 5 years for Albemarle. So to get to the actual question, which is about natural areas, is really that that our comp plan and our zoning ordinance, which is where land uses are regulated in the county, takes care of and really articulates what is possible, what is workable, what is doable in the rural areas. And so the economic development strategic plan, again, back to their sort of nesting documents, is not going to focus on development in the rural area that would be oppositional to what the comp plan wants in the rural area. And so I think, you know, we're looking at what can be done to support the economy within the confines of the broader comp plan, the zoning ordinance. And some of the items that are identified in the strategic plan that Stephen just presented are areas of opportunity around process and some things that we could do to look at are all of our plans well aligned for the outcomes that we're hoping to achieve. Things that are in the strategic plan are really setting up the work plan. So just because it's in the strategic plan doesn't mean that's now what it is, but it really is setting up the work ahead for the next several years, which will be done, you know, with the right departments, with the Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors, the EDA, et cetera, community partners. But it's just sort of setting up what are the things that we should be working on in the coming years. I'm going to invite Stephen to
Yeah,
add
the one thing
that.
I was going to say is that I don't. So to your point, I think much of what we're saying is just with the land, with the developable area that is able to be developed, right? I think one of the things that I think we're asking questions about is how do we just better use that space, right? In terms of maybe even redevelopment opportunities that we face. So the expansion into agricultural lands is definitely not something we're advocating for in this plan at all. In fact, it was one of the constraints that we started with as we started to work with this. The question that we're asking is just how do we better use some of how do we better use the areas that we already have as development opportunities, and some of that will require some redevelopment over time. I do think, you know, I just want to, the language in the question was the question around you know, warehousing and processing plants and those types of things. I actually don't think we're actually calling for that per se. What we're actually calling for is just an opportunity to think about what are the possible needs for small scale investments that are needed to help some of these current businesses grow. So for instance, that could be better use of some of the industrial space property that you have. It could be the fact that we need to have more shared resources in the county, by the way. So we're actually being, I think, to your point about understanding the need to protect everything of who we are as a county, in terms of that, we're trying to actually just say we just got to make better land use choices with the land that we currently have and do that in a way as well. I think we can speak for the team and for Emily and for the Board of Supervisors, never envision broad-based, big-scale manufacturing, right? I think what we're thinking as it relates to this, frankly, you're just don't have the workforce to support that, nor is that the type of growth that you want, right? Again, we want good, high quality, high knowledge based growth. And so the type of growth that we're trying to create in those sectors has to be the growth that also just matches up with the skill sets of the region. But by doing some tweaks on the edge, man, you do create an opportunity for for folks that middle wage income jobs and folks who can't right now participate in some of these firms because frankly, they just don't have the size and scale to grow. We can create those opportunities to do that. So to your point, anonymous question one, we are absolutely thinking about this, and that's a really great question.
Thanks. The next question is how do you recommend that local companies and nonprofits that are already involved in workforce development collaborate with the county to help it achieve our goals?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you don't mind, I'd love to take that one, Emily.
Yeah.
So this plan is really set to really do that, right? So one of the things that we are advocating for Emily and team to do is to work with our sector partnerships to think about how we engage all the right types of workforce development partners around those industry-specific conversations. So be engaged, first and foremost, getting engaged in those sector partnerships is really, really important. Secondly, I know that Emily and team has made a commitment through this plan to just make sure that economic development and workforce development are much more aligned. So Carol, as you may know, this is frankly a space I spend a lot of time thinking about in my both my work at UT Austin, but also my advising work. And that is a lot of times the goals that we have in workforce development can unfortunately be divorced from economic development goals. And so, meaning that a lot of times, both from an economic development standpoint, we have a different set of growth objectives, and workforce development, we're trying to provide maybe resources or technical support services to get some of our most underserved residents into jobs or career pathways. And a lot of times what we do is we say, with those residents, we say, well, go work in food services or healthcare or hospitality jobs. I think one of the things that we're advocating in this plan is trying to do a better job of marrying economic development and workforce development together to try to achieve some shared value, and in making sure that economic development officials and at the region, at the county level, and our companies are being able to hear the needs and understand the concerns that we hear in the workforce development community and vice versa. So this plan is really centered on trying to build out some engagement opportunities to do that. And I would hope that you'd reach out to Emily and team to make that engagement, because it's something that, for this plan to really work, to create the opportunity we want to create, it's all about making sure that we're thinking about how we lead with people, lead with talent, and do that in a way. So that's why the workforce development engagement around this is going to be hugely important.
Thanks.
Emily, anything else that you may add? Go ahead.
Just that if you we've had some engagements through this process with workforce development partners. Actually, some of our most robust and well-attended sessions. But
sure.
we're not part of that. Please reach out to me directly, and we'll make sure that we hook in with you to make sure that we're leveraging all the opportunities and resources in the community.
Thanks. The next question is around acknowledging our limited water supply and how you consider that aspect in the work.
Yeah, so we work really closely with Ravenna Water Sewer Authority and the County Service Authority on any projects, prospects, plans, etc. So I would say we're highly aware of the water supply and what some of the capital plans that they have will change that number over time. And also in real time, use patterns are really important to stay connected with and understanding of. So I would say, we see water as something that we need to have a strong understanding of and work really closely with those partners. And we meet with them regularly to talk about what the opportunities are, what the timelines associated with different developments are, etc.
Thanks. The next question is, what types of businesses contribute most significantly to commercial tax revenue? In our area, many retail and office spaces are still underperforming. Are there business categories or redevelopment approaches that other communities have found particularly effective in revitalizing their tax base?
That is a great question. I'm sure Stephen has some good visibility at trends and what examples from other places. I think I would start the response to this question by saying that every community is going to be a little bit different in what's going to be successful for them, and what the good opportunities will be. So I don't think there's a silver bullet of how you approach commercial tax revenue. There's some industry classes where it's not about the real estate, it's the business personal property taxes. So the amount of equipment and the cost of the equipment is really significant and can generate a lot of local revenues. We worked with the Weldon Cooper Center a couple months ago to do a study to look at, if you just look at property classes, agricultural, residential, and commercial, which can be pretty broad buckets. But you look at the amount of tax revenue that we get from those different properties and the cost to serve those properties. And I'll own that, any commercial use has employees who then have a residential part of their life that drives service demands. But if you just look at those three land use types and look at the revenues in and the costs, expenditures out to serve them. Residential, for every dollar of revenue, there's $1.30-ish of expenditures, and it's much lower. It's about 30 cents to serve a dollar of commercial, and about 50 cents in the agricultural side. So it's really looking at how do you balance that in the best possible way so that you've got all of the needs that the community has, continue to have really, really high quality services that we provide to our residents, and relieve some of that burden off the residential tax base. I'm going to ask Stephen if he has anything that he would add there.
No, I think you did a great job. You nailed it. Nice work.
So the next question is, across the 5 goals, has the EDA looked at what already has worked in comparable sized areas, and what lessons learned are being used? So think about how what the research is and your experience, Stephen, in other localities. How are you integrating that knowledge into the planning effort?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did do in the full plan is just to offer some ideas about how communities have done some best practice work. And so when you take a look at that deck, we did that. I will say one of the things we did is we didn't necessarily limit it to places that are comparably in similar sizes and or even if they're city county assets. Partly that is because a lot of times when you look at best practices in the economic development space, they can be scaled and tweaked depending to meet the needs of a particular community on what the assets are. So for instance, I'll give you an example. You'll see in this work that there is a lot of emphasis put on aligning workforce development and economic development together. And one of the best practices that we shared in the deck is around the Austin Infrastructure Academy, a project I worked on pretty extensively, which is a great best practices for how you convene both your trainers, your workforce developers, your community college, and your civic government partners together to think about how do you solve workforce challenges. That's a challenge that can be scaled up and down depending on the size of the institution, the size of the community. That said, we did look at some other specific examples. We tried to be very clear on, for instance, like around goal 5, there was questions around sort of updating of permitting processes in business visitation processes. We spent a lot of times looking at other places in the Commonwealth, particularly in Virginia, as well as in suburban and parts of Maryland as well, because there are some commonalities both in terms of way that those institutions are set up. So to that end, Serena, I think what we try to do is kind of mix and match. And as we go through the implementation planning process with Emily and team, we are looking to say, well, how are other counties set up to do economic development? How are they spending those resources? I mean, that work is kind of guiding some of the efforts that we're doing around the resource planning. So a mix and match of both, I think.
All right, moving to the next question. Where in this plan or how in this plan are future costs delineated? Will increased commercial tax revenues, how will you consider increased commercial tax revenues?
Well, I'll let you take that one.
Thanks, Stephen. So I think back to that cost of services study that was just done with Weldon Cooper, commercial taxes, generally speaking, will generate more revenues than they will drive expenditures. The economic development strategic plan is again sort of focused on how can the county be a partner in a vibrant economy, and that's sort of one lens. That's sort of how we set the aperture for that plan. But the whole county, works through the comprehensive plan and the capital improvement plan process to really plan the investments that are necessary, and through partnership with VDOT on the roadside, to really plan out and fund the necessary infrastructure improvements. So it's not directly answered in this plan, but it's, all of this stuff sort of lines up together and is part of the work that we do here in Albemarle every day, day in and day out, to make sure that we're keeping up with the infrastructure needs of the community as things shift. And again, it's not all about growth in an outward sense. The comp plan is very clear about development areas versus rural areas. there's a lot of redevelopment opportunities that we have in the county as well. And so it's, you know, the infrastructure demands for greenfield versus redevelopment are a little bit different. And you know, so this plan doesn't have that all delineated, but it's absolutely part of the work that we do here. And you know, we'll continue to plan and make sure that our plans adapt for the needs of the future.
Okay, I want to be sensitive to time, but we have a few really good questions still to go. So let's get through this. Next question is, as part of the current comprehensive plan process, UVA's Weldon Cooper Center projected that the county's population will expand by 30,000 people over the next 20 years. Does that projection account for the business expansions and the new businesses created that would result from implementing the actions in the strategic plan? Or will the county increase beyond Weldon Cooper's projection? Can you look into your crystal ball?
Yeah, you know, the Weldon Cooper Center is known for the work that they do on population projections. They're more accurate than really any other game in town or really the country. So so their plan, you know, their inputs are partially driven by their observations and the plans that they know that exist. I would say that one of the things that we heard a lot when we were doing stakeholder engagement for this plan from business owners is that as they're scaling their startup businesses and going from less than 5 employees, you know, trying to go up to 20 and beyond, they often find themselves in a position where they have specialized talent needs that they can't recruit for in our market. And so that drives them to looking external and doing an external recruitment. And they don't love that because that's hard. And they would rather be hiring locally. And that's, again, going all the way back to Stephen's been talking a lot about workforce development. That's really the drive for that focus. We want to make sure that our community, our high school students are in a good position to be able to be successful candidates for the jobs that we know that are coming, so that it's not this big growth attraction scenario, but really just making sure that we have the types of jobs that let us make sure that our community can sort of stay in place if they want to, that you don't have to graduate from our local high schools or the University of Virginia or PBCC and go to Richmond or DC or California or New York. And so that's, you know, it's hard to know exactly how that would impact the population projection that Weldon Cooper did, but know that a lot of this is about making sure that we have good jobs for our current community.
Thanks. The next question is, how do you grow the defense intelligence sector without data centers? So maybe talk about the relationship between data centers and the intelligence industry.
Yeah, that's
Data centers, Emily's favorite concept.
That's a great question. Louisa, I don't know if folks have seen it yet. Louisa County just announced Amazon just announced that they'll be building a 3rd data center project in Louisa County, which is very close to us. And you know, economic development is not doesn't follow administrative political boundaries. You know, we really see all of the sectors, the biotech sector, the agribusiness food processing sector, the national security intelligence sector, not as just Albemarle things. These are things that have regional assets, that have regional opportunities, and we need the assets of Greene County and the city of Charlottesville and Fluvanna and Louisa, just as much as we need opportunities and assets in Albemarle. You know, data centers are part of the defense sector. There's a lot of other elements there too. I hope many of you know that the county has 462 acres next to Ravenna Station that we purchased in 2023. And we're really trying to build out an innovation campus in the national security space there. What that looks like, you know, we will say to folks, we're adaptive and nimble on what that could look like. So that could be offices, that could be advanced manufacturing, it could be any number of things. And so I think there's not one form that industries in that sector take. The board does have a policy effort underway for data centers specifically. So I encourage folks on the Engage page. Oh, somebody put it in. So there's a link in the chat now to the data center regulations page where you can learn more about what the conversation on that is looking like. But stay tuned. There's another virtual lunch and learn much like this on June 16th. There is an in-person meeting on June 30th where you can learn more about the policy work that the board is doing on data centers right now.
All right. How do you see protecting the value of conserved land and its protected tax status and the value it brings to the county?
This is this one falls a little outside of my wheelhouse. You know, again, the Board of Supervisors has a broad range of areas that they work through. And so, you know, the Economic Development Strategic Plan and the work that my team does is always going to follow all of the policies and frameworks that we have as a community.
All right, and then you might have to tell me what this acronym means. How does this plan align with the regional CEDS plan? If somebody could say what that is, that'd be great.
Yeah, the CEDS plan, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, is a regional economic development plan for actually ours is a super plan. So it's for Central Virginia and Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission, and the one to our north, whose name I am not, Rappahannock Rapidan, I think is what that planning district commission is. One of the first things that we did when we brought residents on board to do our economic development strategic plan was to give them all of the plans that exist that are relevant for their work, so that again, we were really looking for good alignment. So if you look at the target sectors that were identified in that CEDS process, which wrapped up about a year ago, there's great alignment between the plans. I would say, you know, when you're looking with a large aperture, the peaks and valleys, peaks and troughs get softened up a little bit. And so the benefit of doing a county plan is really being able to see what are our peaks and troughs and what are our real opportunities. And so, you know, the sectors that Stephen walked us through earlier are in that plan. And, you know, I think open the door for a lot of really positive regional collaboration, which is not waiting for the plan to get adopted. We're doing that right now because we know that there's a lot of opportunities for us to work together.
Great. And we are going to make time for this one last question. Regarding attracting and or retaining young talent, has the team evaluated incentive programs like those around the country that pay $8,000 to $10,000 for talented remote workers to move to the community and commit to engaging for a year? Or any other concepts to share regarding young talent retention and attraction?
Yeah, we did look at I mean, so you're referring to the Tulsa Remote Program. There's a program in West Virginia. You know, to be honest with you, the literature on those programs and the effectiveness on those programs are extremely mixed. And if they actually are that effective. But we didn't look at any particular incentive program like that. But what we did look at, and one of the things I think you'll see in this plan, is there is a commitment to think through some work to support young talent and professionals in the area through some type of social engagement work. So programs like the Thai Pros program and others, I think that you know, those are programs that have proven to be pretty effective. And one of the things we do has modeled in that. In the action plan that we're working with Emily and team, we are suggesting the need to look at other best practice programs. So that could be Tulsa Remote, could be the West Virginia program, could be the Bentonville program, others as examples. Those are all cool programs. I will say though, as kind of an academic kind of thinks about that stuff, those programs, the long-term impact of those programs in terms of quote unquote the return on the investment is highly skeptical, and there's a big TBD on those programs, frankly.
But I do think we are looking for other ways to sort of in economic, I don't know if people like this word or not like this word, but in economic development, people talk about stickiness of talent. So we have thousands, I think it's 8,500 young people graduating from PBCC and the University of Virginia combined each year. And what would it look like? What would it look like for them to want to and be able to stay here, so that there's a good job waiting for them with a clear career path that they feel like would be fulfilling and match their interests, and a good strong network of other young folks, for them to have, you know, the fun part of life. So it's not all about work. So what does it look like for us to have the right type of, you know, after work activities and assets and opportunities for folks
sure.
engaged in.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right.
We did it.
So I want to thank everyone so much for spending your lunch hour with us on a beautiful Friday. The chat has some really good links in it. There's a link to all of them are off of the sort of the central engage.albemarle.org. You can find this project page. You can find the full version of the deck that Stephen did about half of today. You can find the data center regulation page. There's also a survey where you can provide specific feedback on any or all of the goals that Stephen went through on the strategy. So we really encourage you to take, 5 minutes to share some thoughts there, good or bad. We look forward to continuing the work on the plan over the summer. Again, this sort of all culminates at a joint meeting of the Board of Supervisors and the Economic Development Authority that's scheduled for August 13th. And then the work really begins. So we are really excited about sort of the next chapter for economic development in Albemarle County, and really just, again, appreciative of your time and interest in learning more about what we're doing. Thanks, everyone.